Hey everybody, welcome back to the book of Luke. So today we're Luke chapter 1, 5 through 25. And as you're reading today, there's three things I want you to be looking for. Number one, you're going to be introduced to two people, Zechariah and Elizabeth. So get out a journal, get out a piece of paper, and jot down some of the things that you learn about them. What were they like? Are they honorable or are they shameful people? Are they good people, bad people? Number two, Luke is God's love in many ways to many people. So, how does 1, 5 through 25 show God's love? Number 3, Luke is beginning to unravel God's plan. So, how does Luke 1, 5 through 25 show the plan of God? Okay, so looking for those three things. Maybe get out a journal, jot things down, and go ahead and pause me, and I'll see you back here in a couple minutes. Okay, so hopefully you've read Luke 1, 5 through 25, and you've learned a little bit about Zechariah and Elizabeth. So, who are they? What are they like? One thing that sticks out, it's repeated over and over and over again, is they're old, really old, and they have no kids. So, on the one hand, Zechariah and Elizabeth are a shameful couple. They must be bad. They must not be obeying God because God hasn't blessed them and given them any kids. But that's not what the text says, is it? The text specifically says in verse 6 that they are upright, they observe all, and they are blameless. It uses that kind of language to describe these two. So, even though they're obedient, they're barren. And even though they're barren, they're obedient. We have this couple that has been praying for a kid. You know they've been praying for a kid forever. You know that their plan was they were going to get married. They were young. They were in love. They were going to get married and have lots and lots of kids, a full house. And Zechariah was going to teach his sons how to be priests, and they were going to grow up and be priests because they're both from the line of Aaron, the text says. And that's not what happened. Their plan was not God's plan. And yet they continue to be obedient. So, the day comes that Zechariah is on duty at the temple, the text tells us. By the way, Zechariah is one of 18,000 priests that serve at this temple. So, they take turns. He's from the order of Abijah. It's their 2-week turn to serve at the temple. So 2 weeks a year, they go, they do their job. Not only that, there's so many priests that they cast lots, the text says, to decide who's going to go in and light the altar of incense. And it just so happens that on this day, the lot falls on Zechariah. So it's his turn. It's the biggest day of his life. It's like his turn to preach, so to speak, using modern analogy. And so he goes in, business as usual, except, you remember what happens, the text tells us Gabriel's standing there. Gabriel shows up, Zechariah is frightened and scared. But Gabriel says, Zechariah, don't be afraid, your prayer has been answered. So the question is, what was Zechariah praying for in there? Was he praying for the redemption of Israel, like he should have been? Or was he praying for a son, like we know he probably was? Doesn't matter, because Gabriel says, look, your prayer has been answered. Elizabeth is going to have a baby. Jaw drop. This answers both prayers, because what Zechariah is going to explain is that this baby is going to be the forerunner of the Redeemer of Israel, and he's going to be your son. So Zechariah, your prayers have been answered. Now check out the text. Everybody look at verse 15. Your son will be great. We need to notice that because that's going to be said about the next baby that's going to show up too, except the next baby is going to be even greater. Okay, so your baby will be great. Verse 15. Check this out. He will not take strong drink. He won't drink wine, and he will be filled with the Spirit. That sounds kind of familiar. Ephesians 5:18. Paul tells all Christians, don't be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. So in a sense, all of us have the same calling, a similar calling, I should say, as John the Baptist. And we're going to talk more about that later in another section. We're going to compare ourselves to John the Baptist. Okay, verse 16, the angel quotes from the book of Malachi, an Old Testament prophet, and says, your son John is going to bring people's hearts back to God. People are going to start following God again. Fathers' hearts will be turned towards their children. So family unity is going to be restored. So Zechariah, cheer up. You're not just going to have a son. You're going to have a great son. You're going to have a son that has been prophesied about 400 years earlier. So Zechariah's like, wow. But Zechariah, verse 18, doubts. How can this be? In other words, he's saying, give me a sign. What's going on? We're old. We can't have kids. This is impossible. Gabriel loses it. Notice how Gabriel's, verse 19, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. How dare you question me? Because of that, shut up. Zechariah, you're not going to talk for 9 months. You want a sign? I'm going to give you a sign. No talking and probably no hearing either, because later in the text it tells us that people did sign language to him to get him to understand things. Verse 20, you will be silent, not able to speak until this happens. So Zechariah gets a little time out, and the people are standing outside waiting for Zechariah to come out, and when he comes out, he's supposed to pray out loud in front of all the people, but obviously he can't. He's, nothing's coming out. So the people realize, oh wow, he must have seen a vision. And of course he has. He's seen an angel. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple. This is the end of verse 22. For he kept making signs. Verse 23, when his time of service was complete, goes home to Elizabeth, and guess what? She gets pregnant, just like the angel said she would. After this, 23, Elizabeth became pregnant and for 5 months remained in seclusion. We don't know why. Worshiping God or who knows. Text doesn't tell us why she hid herself for 5 months. Verse 25, the Lord has done this for me. Elizabeth says, the Lord has done this for me. In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace. Very reminiscent of another Old Testament lady, Rachel, who didn't have any kids. And then finally, when God gave her a son, she said, God has taken away my disgrace. Elizabeth is very similar to that story. Notice that she says, God has shown me favor. God has honored me. He's taken away my shame. The Lord has done this for me. Not when I wanted him to. I wanted him to do this 50 years ago. But he has done it. So that's our takeaway in this section. Luke 1, 5 through 25. The Lord has done this for me. I know a lot of you guys are out there, you're waiting for something, and you're praying, and you're praying, and you're praying, and you're asking God, when? And God's saying, be patient, be patient. My timing is perfect. One day, like Elizabeth, you're going to be able to say, the Lord has done this for me. So, Zechariah and Elizabeth, honorable people, yes. God's love, yes. God shows his love and mercy to these two people that have been faithful to him for years and years and years and years. And God's plan is getting kicked off. John the Baptist is a-coming, and he is going to prepare the way for the Lord. All right, I'll see you on the flip side, and we'll start with Luke 1:26.